Normally I do comic reviews via the written word, for which I have great respect. But as Rarity notes in this same issue, politics shouldn't be discussed between friends. Many of us like to avoid the topic, but that's because our politics are part of our worldview. Having someone challenge them can often feel like an attack on our sense of self. So while I enjoy the written word, I'm hoping that hearing my voice for this comic review will invite a little more ease. Because while this issue can mirror the current election on the surface, I don't think it's a one-to-one comparison. Before digging into the meat of it, let's talk about lighter topics. Agnes Garboska's artwork remains enjoyable and distinct, though I noticed a change in the coloring. I don't know if this is in part because of Lauren Perry's assistance. Usually, Garboska's artwork features a subtle shading that creates a watercolor feel. The flip side being that everything features this shading, so it's harder for things to stand out. In this issue, ponies feature much sharper tones, so they stand out from the background. That includes the color for Starlight Glimmer, making her comic debut. She's present? I mean, she doesn't offer any particular insight other than asking about Ponyville's non-existent election history. While Twilight polls her friends on who they'd vote for, Starlight gets skipped over, either because she legally can't vote as a new resident, or this is more about introducing her than giving her a big role. Spike, of course, doesn't miss a beat to remind Starlight of her past tyranny. I am fully expecting a head smack either in the show or comics by February of next year. Twilight, meanwhile, shows a certain naivete that matches someone who is book smart, but needs to learn more about the rest of the world. It's a weird duality. Twilight has become the princess of friendship, so one would expect her to be a little more world-savvy, but that innocence is part of her character's appeal. I'm glad the political debate featured more than just Mayor and Filthy Rich, even though the remaining contenders were just there for humor. Shira Lee was a pony dedicated to a cause, but not seeing a big enough picture. Lyra was just there for some show references and to remind us that not everyone who runs does so for sane reasons. And Time Turner. I know he's there just to make Doctor Who references, but darned if I'm not a sucker for that. I'm also envious of how the ponies conduct themselves during an election. Despite the varying views, there are no insults or arguments between the population. They listen, they cheer, they vote. Of course, the losing party is none too happy, but there's a great deal more civility than what I see these days. Maybe because the Ponyvillians got the bitterness out of their system in the two-part Ponyville Days story. The one where they were either throwing pies or dresses at one another. Yeah, that was weird. With all that said, we turn to our main issue, Mayor versus Filthy Rich. Let's see how these two mirror our presidential candidates. Hillary Clinton is female. So is Mayor. Donald Trump is male and very rich. So is Filthy Rich. And that's about it. There are other elements in the story that people can interpret as either praise or a slight against their own party, but taking a look at these comics, it's not a reflection on either candidate. So if you read this comic in the hopes of some kind of insight or commentary, I think you'll be disappointed. That's not to say there isn't an analogy to be made, but I'll tackle that shortly. There is a spoiler inherent to the story's setup. We know that Mayor is going to remain in office by story's end. To do otherwise would separate the comics from the show further than I think IDW is willing to go. So the comic devotes a lot of energy to making the mayor more sympathetic. She asserts over and over that she wants what's best for Ponyville, even if the right choice isn't herself. She exemplifies this by not using Twilight's volunteer work as a royal endorsement. Filthy Rich comes off as more callous as he is disrespectful to Rarity, despite the fact they spoke on better terms in the aforementioned Ponyville Days arc. That is the double edge that is continuity. It's great to see returning characters from Applejack and Mayor's Friends Forever issue, especially impressive because this comic has a different writer and artist. Usually, comic-exclusive characters don't make a return unless their creative authors and artists likewise come back. However, acknowledging this past means it's more awkward when events seem to contradict. With these characters' return comes the chaotic, unstructured cabinet that nearly drove Applejack to a nervous breakdown. In terms of organization, Filthy Rich is the better candidate, though he doesn't have to manage the town while campaigning. In fact, the comic stresses that he has no platform other than vote for me. He's also the only candidate who resorts to mudslinging. Yet I think this comic does highlight the mayor's weaknesses as well. While she has Ponyville's well-being at heart, she's too complacent. The main six emphasize that she's run unopposed for many years, and my hope is this arc will conclude with her having a new fire within. A leader should not be content with the status quo. I think there needs to be a healthy discontentment, the ability to look at what's good and bad and say what could be better. So with this comic making Mayor more sympathetic, is it endorsing one political party or individual? I don't think it is. Instead, it's making a case for different priorities. To elaborate, I need to swap books on y'all. From a comic book to a book. Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. In the first chapter, this book establishes two mindsets in pre- and post-industrial America. The culture of character is represented by Mayor Mare. It was from a period where Americans were encouraged to keep their heads down and commit moral actions without seeking recognition or praise. A person gained respect and recognition by long-time standing within the community and familiarity built since childhood. With the advent of American industrialism in the 20th century, we shifted to a culture of personality, which is represented by Filthy Rich. Success became less about the quality of character demonstrated in private and more about the persona one presented to the larger world. This means quick identification, big promises, and larger-than-life personas. And let's be clear, both parties use these tactics. We've had both "who would you rather have a beer with" and "hope and change" become catchphrases. If there's a criticism of anything in this comic, it's not against politicians or specific parties. It points out how easily we can be swayed by big promises and instant gratification. The story is only half done at this point, which raises the question of how the election's winner will handle the first crisis. My hope is that while Mayor Mare will remain in office, she'll acknowledge her mistakes and become better for the experience. We'll see in about a month. I'm Silver-Quill. Thanks for watching.